guys, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. How are you guys doing? Are you having a great day? I hope you are. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I was trying to get everything in order. I just got home from picking my son up from school, and I thought I had everything organized, and then I was having a hard time finding Amber's cutout. So say hello to Amber and Johnny. Hi, Johnny. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are in the middle of a $50 million legal case over some statements that Amber has made repeatedly about her ex-husband, Johnny. Now, in 2016, the two of them, Amber filed for divorce, and she alleged that Johnny had been, there had been some DV against her by her husband. She went to court and appeared to have a bruise under her eye. And she alleged that she needed this restraining order because he was a monster. They eventually, he denied it. And people that saw her only days before she arrived at court did not notice anything on her face, any scratches, any bruising. And so people thought that she had perhaps fabricated the injury in order to get the restraining order. There was a lot of questions and doubt right off the bat because Johnny had never had any altercations with women in the past. In fact, his mother of his two children, Vanessa Parties, I think it is, she came out and said that Johnny had never, ever in the 14 years that they lived together had any altercations between the two of them that were physical. His ex-girlfriend, Winona Ryder, said the same thing. She dated him, I think, in the 90s. Kate Moss, another one of his girlfriends, came out as well and said that nothing had happened between her and Johnny. So he had a lot of ex-girlfriends claiming that this was not a pattern of his behavior. Now, the only difference here was that during the period of their marriage, there was some substance abuse issues of Johnny. He had developed a reliance on pain medications as well as he is a, I don't know, functioning alcoholic to say. I don't know. He drinks a lot of red wine, let's just say. There was leaked videotape of that Amber put out of Johnny, throwing bottles and getting very angry one night while he was drunk. But Johnny had alleged, not only had denied a lot of the allegations against her, but also stated that she was the one that was actually physical. The two of them eventually come to an agreement in August of 2016, and she gets a $7 million settlement for the divorce. She's then starts sort of on this crusade where she joins all of these causes, and she starts becoming sort of the spokeswoman for females that are involved with powerful men and have DV in their relationships. She literally just spoke last month at a women's rally and for women's rights. Her Twitter is filled with posts about women who have been victimized in relationships. She has definitely taken a hold of this being a spokesperson and being sort of the perfect DV ambassador, right? Some people have never believed her, but it has cost Johnny quite the spiraling of reputation. She wrote in 2018 an op-ed post about DV and about women's rights and about about being involved with a man that had a lot more power and influence on her and the difficulties she had at that time because of the alleged DV within the relationship. While she never explicitly said Johnny's name at the time, it was implied, and Johnny says that he lost his role as Jack Sparrow in the Disney's movies Pirates of the Caribbean. They had done five total movies. Is one of the most successful franchises in blockbuster history for movies, and Johnny was dropped. Now, he says it's because of Amber's op-ed piece and all of the stuff she was doing to smear his name, and he fought back and he filed a $50 million defamation lawsuit in May of 2019. So over the past few months, there's been evidence that's been coming forward. There's actually a count on YouTube that's been sort of documenting it, and they apparently have been gaining access to documents and audio that has been put into the records for this case. Thus far, she countered by putting together a 300-page counter to him because he claims that she's lying about all of these instances and says that she was the one that was doing this to him, and she has been smearing his name, tarnishing his reputation, ruined his ability to work. And she then fired back with this 300-page statement. She provided text messages and photos alleging that she referred to him as a monster in this document to the court. But he has also provided, and dozens of people have come forward and sworn affidavits to the court where they allege that Amber was actually the perpetrator more often than not in anything that they had witnessed. So it was just on Saturday that the Daily Mail, or Friday, the Daily Mail released some clips of audio that were taken between Johnny and Amber in a joint sort of sit-down informal session where they were supposed to speak about their relationship, and they both agreed that they would tape the conversation. During the conversation, it's alarming because Amber repeatedly admits that she's the one that's getting physical and not the other way around. And she's mad at Johnny for actually leaving the scene when things get heated. The conversation followed a alleged incident between the two of them where she punched him in the face, and he and her are trying to talk through that, but they go through a lot of different instances. In fact, they talk about an incident in Australia where he ended up in the hospital. There's a lot about a plane ride, but the biggest thing is that she sat in a sworn deposition like a couple years ago and said that in the entirety of her relationship with Johnny, only one time did she ever get physical with him. But in this audio tape, she admits to repeated acts against him, which has a lot of people sort of outraged and frustrated because this is not sort of what she has sold to people about him. So there is a YouTube channel called Incredibly Average that has been releasing it, and I want to just play a couple clips for you of what she says. This clip I'm going to play for you really quickly here. She is going to admit to throwing pots and pans at him, something she claimed that he did to her. Let me make sure my audio is up here.
Never are the one to come and knock on my door. You take me for granted.
It's not true. It's not true. I'm not the one who fucking throws fucking pots and
That's different. That's different.
Else at me.
That's different. That's one does not negate the other. That's irrelevant. It's a complete non sequitur. Just because I've thrown pots and pans does not mean that you come and knock on the door. Just because there are vases does not mean that you come and knock on the door.
Really, I should just let you throw.
I'm not saying that. You're saying that. You're putting words in my mouth and then making non sequiturs.
I'm giving you a situation.
No, you're trying to justify how you don't or do come to the door.
No,
based
I'm
on whether I throw pots and pans. It's irrelevant.
No, I'm justifying how you seem to think that there's this cowardice in me that runs away and I don't fight for you.
And you're justifying that by saying I throw pots and pans? Okay, cool. Let's talk about everything you do, Rob.
I'm not the one who fucking did that. I didn't.
So that makes sense. So that's clear. Yeah.
The only time I ever threw anything at you was when you fucking threw the cans at me in Australia.
Why are you trying to justify who throws things based on whether or not you come knocking on the door?
So in that clip, she was angry at him because she says that when they fight, he never returns or comes to her to work things out. And his sentiment is that, why do I want to be near you when I know that in these situations you're going to say throw pots and pans, throw vases, and then she's twisting things and basically saying that doesn't excuse the fact that you're not coming. But he's saying, well, I'm not coming because why would I want to put myself in a situation where things could get physical? So I noticed as I was listening to a lot of this audio, and the full thing of the audio is actually on the link, is on the channel Incredibly Average. It has almost 1 million views on YouTube right now. But really, the thing that I noticed more often than not is anytime he expresses that the reason why he doesn't want to be near her is because he doesn't want things to get physical, she then is twisting things and saying, well, you always leave. And he's saying, well, I need to leave because I don't want anything to happen. And then she sort of mitigates and diminishes the fact that he has gone through these things. He does admit to pushing her, and I think I don't think would be fair to say that, maybe he didn't do things in the past, but in the fact of the matter is, in this case, she's admitting repeatedly to doing things that she claimed that he did in her 300 pages of documents. For instance, she said that it was him that was always throwing things in the documents, but then in this audio, it's her admitting that she's the one that's always doing things, and she agrees with him that he only threw something at her one time. Then there's another argument here. Let me just get to it.
That's not the case. It's not why you're with me. I am honest with you. I'm sorry. You don't want to be held accountable. I get it.
I'm not sure you're so honest with me.
Oh, that's your...
Watching you live in front of Travis last night was really
that's your problem, and that's your whole thing that you've created. So I'm not going to sit here and go over every fight we've had. I'm not going to refight this fight. You have something you're holding on to about Travis. Go fuck. Go do it. Go run away together. I don't know what you're fucking holding on to, but you have created that. I have no part of that. I don't know what you're fucking latched on.
So she's like, basically, he's trying to talk to her about how the night before she hit him with a closed fist, and she's saying, well, she doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want to rehash it. She'd rather that he just go off and deal with his bodyguard because he had called his bodyguard over to come to separate them so that things didn't get more escalated. And she's like, well, just go off with them. Just leave with them. It's just so manipulative to me that these are sort of the ways that, like, she's sort of minimizing this. And then in another place, let me get it right here.
Me in the fucking jug, did you fucking kick? Did you? And you wouldn't say fucking, you said, I don't know what you're talking about. It never fucking,
I see the
never
lie.
fucking happened.
I see the lie. You really should run with this. In fact, maybe you and Travis can, go and, do a tell-all about...
I'm feigned and taunt.
Let me get it right here.
The fight that we had last night.
After you fucking got physically violent with me, I texted Travis, I said, come up here, because I didn't want anything to happen.
I mean, yeah.
Come to what, save me?
No, go ahead, continue. You, Travis to the rescue.
No, that was the last one. You can go, go. That was the last insult.
You called me a liar? Yeah.
I watched you lie.
You called me a liar?
I watched you lie. I heard it. I was right there.
There's no what? You still haven't told me what lie it is. But yet every single fucking time. You do this every single fucking time.
We'll talk to Travis.
I'm not fucking talking to nobody.
No,
fuck that. You go fucking jerk him off. I don't care. I really could care less. It's you every single time. You latch onto some sort of thing when I already told you. I don't know what you're fucking talking about. You don't even know what you're talking about. You still haven't even told me what it is. But run with it.
I have told you what it is.
No, you haven't.
I said to Travis, I said to you, hey, tell Travis what just happened.
You told me to do it. You told me to. You said, go do that.
I said, no, tell him what just happened.
And I lied.
And that you punched me in the fucking thing, and you in the face, and you said, no, fuck it, I didn't. What the fuck are you talking about? And I watched you lie, and then I
didn't punch you. By the way, I'm sorry that I didn't hit you across the face in a proper slap, but I was hitting you. It was not punching you, babe. You're not punched.
Don't tell me what it feels like to be punched.
No, even a lot of guys have been around a long time. I know. Yeah.
No, when you fucking have a closed fist.
You get punched. You got hit. I'm sorry I hit you like this, but I did not punch you. I did not fucking deck you. I fucking was hitting you.
You can't
I don't know what
me.
the motion of my actual hand was, but you're fine. I did not hurt you. I did not punch you. I was hitting you.
How are your toes?
What am I supposed to do? Do this?
How are your toes?
I'm not sitting here bitching about it, am I? You are.
Oh,
that's the difference between me and you. You're a fucking baby.
Because you start physical fights?
You're such a baby!
Because
Grow the fuck up!
Because you start physical fights?
I did start a physical fight.
Yeah, you did, so I had to get the fuck out of there.
Yes, you did. So you did the right thing, the big thing. You know what? You're admirable.
So she admits that she was not punching him but hitting him, and that he was admirable for walking out on her. And apparently this whole thing started was because he opened a door, trying to, a door was opened in order to, get to her, and he accidentally scraped her toes. And when he knelt down to check on her toes, she punched him in the face. And she's mocking him and saying, I didn't hurt you. It wasn't a closed fist. I started it and you did walk away. This is a very different tale than what she has spun. She has said consistently that he was the one that did this. She's on record, on deposition, on a sworn deposition, that she literally only made physical contact with him one time. She has admitted that he didn't even do anything back to defend himself. And she admits even later on, when they try to come to a consensus, that she can't guarantee that she won't get physical with him again because sometimes she just pops off. So my thing is I don't know if this necessarily clears him completely. What I do know is that it can be two people in a relationship being physical. Both of them maybe got physical with each other, but I don't think it's fair to be like, well, I'm the victim when you are actually also perpetrating it as well. So if you are on tape admitting to someone that you did these things, that you are doing these things, and they aren't that, they're frames. Johnny's not a very tall guy. Amber's kind of tall for a woman. They're pretty close to the same size. So I do think that these two could get into it and it would probably be a fairly fair fight. So my question is why were people so quick to, it's like she latched on to the Me Too movement. She latched on to the Time's Up movement. She still is speaking as an ambassador for all these different causes. And yet here she is on tape admitting to being someone that's doing these things that she is speaking out against. She also was arrested in 2009 for an altercation between her and her girlfriend, which an officer in an airport witnessed her doing. So there's a lot of, and there was two other incidences before this where she was alleged to doing something to another significant other. So it was a pattern. So I don't know that Johnny is completely innocent here, but I do think it's unfair to paint one person as the villain when you are also participating in it. You are actually initiating it. You're the one that admits that you can't control yourself, but yet you're using your platform to speak out. It reeks like hypocrisy. So now on Twitter, Justice for Johnny Depp is trending. And then you also have people starting petitions on change.org to get her off of the sequel to Aquaman, which she starred in. There's over 105,000 signatures at this point to boycotting her and getting her off from that film. And then she's got all these, they're tweeting to all these different organizations that she's working with, asking them to remove her, to speak out against this. So USA Today reached out to her attorney, and her attorney said, the first confessional tape she made reveals a conversation any real abuse victim will recognize all too well. It exposes that, this is what her attorney says. The fact that a woman fights or talks back does not mean that she she has not been the subject of repeated DV. It's a myth to say, as Mr. Depp apparently is implying, that if Miss Heard slapped him, then she also can't be a victim. That is just not true. Well, I think the difference here is that she only admitted to doing it one time and then seemed to imply that she never fought back. She also implied that she didn't know how to, didn't know what to do, but then is on tape literally saying, sometimes I'm the one doing all of these things and it's only me, not you. And you're walking away. And she's admitting that he's walking away and admitting that he's trying to remove himself and calls him admirable. I'm not the kind of person that's like immediately let's cancel Amber Heard, but I do think that there's been some misrepresentation of this relationship, and she's really fed into this idea that she was railroaded by someone that is more powerful than her. And at the time of their marriage, he did have a lot more money, but then at the same time, she hasn't stopped talking about it. She hasn't stopped talking about it in the entire, they've been split for 4 years. And she hasn't stopped talking about it for 4 years. Even though she got $7 million from him in the divorce, she hasn't stopped talking about it. She has used that as a platform for fame. And every time she has talked about it, it has made him look worse and worse and worse, and he has lost more and more opportunities to work. And his story has remained consistent that it was her that was doing this to him. So I think she hasn't said anything outside of what her attorney just released, and they still have this ongoing case. It's slated to go to trial in August of 2020. But the more and more evidence that comes forward and the more and more people that speak out, it all seems to point to the fact that it was her that was doing this and not him. So I'm not sure what to believe. I don't know if we completely exonerate Johnny at this point, but I also don't think that she's a blameless victim. Real victims aren't provoking and causing these kinds of fights. They're not they're not the ones getting physical. They're not. There are plenty of women that are involved in these kinds of relationships that don't fight back ever. And they don't get physical, ever. And I think there's this stigma in society that you can only be one thing or another, right? I also think there's a stigma in society that men cannot be victims. We saw this with Amber Portwood. It's always the Ambers, isn't it? And what she has a history of doing to her significant others. It does happen to men, and that doesn't mean it's any less tragic and that it's any less, just because he's strong and he's a man doesn't mean that it's any less terrible. Sometimes I feel like we're so quick to prosecute and persecute people without looking at the facts. I was always torn about what to believe because I've always been a humongous fan of Johnny's. He was my crush for decades. His movies defined my life as a teenager. He was Edward Scissorhands, and he was in all of the movies, 21 Jump Street. I mean, he was, when I am a child and into my adolescence, he was it. He was on my walls. He was Johnny Depp. So it was hard for me to believe this because none of his other girlfriends had said anything about it. And then now you've got one that's claiming all of these things. It's hard to believe. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It's just not a pattern of behavior we were used to hearing about. Could it just be that the two of them together were just created as tornado? Maybe. Could he have been spiraling into using drugs? Maybe. But she can't say on a deposition that it only happened one time and then in an audio with him admit to doing it multiple times. And then you can't use that platform to then advocate against these kinds of behaviors because you are also doing those things that are not justified or right. I don't know how this will turn out and who's going to respond and what will happen and if she'll get backlash. People are tweeting at her and getting angry. So far, none of the organizations that are tied to her are speaking out or even saying that it's bad or anything like that. And the wider mainstream media isn't covering it, which is odd to me. Us Weekly hasn't written about it yet. People Magazine, TMZ, all of the major outlets that have been dragging him have not released or talked about this. You know, it hasn't even made it to like NBC, ABC, CBS, like all the major outlets that covered her. Washington Post, that allowed her to write that op-ed, hasn't responded. The New York Times, who has dragged him, hasn't responded. It's interesting to me that the only people that are covering it are the lower level sort of tabloids, and not the same media outlets that immediately took her side. And that makes me wonder, do they not believe it? Do they think that there's more to the story, or are they just waiting for more evidence? But I think if we are going to react to the things that she says without evidence, then we should also react to the things that he claims when he brings evidence, right? It's only fair. Fair is fair. So I would like to know what your thoughts are. Does this completely change things? Do you think that things should be like more even now in this? Do you think that she should lose those opportunities with these different organizations because she's on tape admitting to doing these things, and then she has a repeated history with other girlfriends of doing this kind of stuff? Or do you think that she's just fighting back because she's the girl and she can't hurt him? I would love to know what your thoughts are on that. This is what my thought is. I still don't know fully all of this, but I do know that there is something smelly and something stinky, and somebody's not telling the truth. And I don't think Amber's telling the truth. And she had a lot of reasons to not tell the truth, because clinging to this story has given her a lot of fame and power and influence. And as we've seen in the past with other individuals that have come forward, that within this Me Too movement, sadly, they have fabricated their stories for attention. And that takes away from all of us that are actual victims when people are not truthful. Because then conservative pundits will say that all the women are lying. And it just makes the cycle repeat itself. All right, you guys, I would love to hear what your thoughts are.